about the concept of vicarious liability. So under this vicarious liability, it is the legal responsibility of one person for the wrongful act caused by another person. So here మీరు చేసిన తప్పుకి నేను పే చేస్తాను. So I am paying for your wrongful act. So the damage is caused by you and I am paying for it. So I am held vicariously liable to compensate for your legal injury caused to the another person. So here let's take an example. There is a restaurant, and restaurant unte obviously manager, waiter and customer will be present. So the waiter by mistakenly spills or throws by mistakenly food or water onto the customer. So now the customer is seeking compensation for the wrongful act committed by waiter. So now in this scenario, the manager comes in between and he will be held vicariously liable to compensate. So in this scenario, in this case, even though the manager has not committed any wrongful act and he did not cause any legal injury to the customer, he will be vicariously held liable to compensate to the customer. Now the waiter has committed the wrongful act. The manager is vicariously held liable to compensate to the legal injury caused to the customer. So this is the scenario where one person commits a wrongful act and the other person comes into play to compensate to the damage or the legal injury that has caused to the plaintiff. So there are various types of vicarious liabilities. First one is master and servant, principal and agent, partners in partnership, owner and the independent contractor, parent and child, company and directors. So this is all about the vicarious liability. Liability is all about you doing the wrong and I pay for it. It is as simple as that. మీరు చేసిన తప్పుకి ఇంకెవరో మనీ పే చేస్తారు. So there are some case laws regarding the vicarious liability. There are some case laws regarding the vicarious liability. The first one is State of Rajasthan versus Vidyavati. In this case law, the judgment was the state held liable for the negligence of driver. Obviously, the negligence is shown by the driver and the state is held liable to compensate for his negligence. So this is here the state is vicariously held liable to compensate for the negligence of driver. So here driver is the wrongdoer and he committed the wrongful act. So even though the wrongdoer, that is the driver, has committed the wrongful act, the state is held liable to pay compensation for his negligence. So the second one is Limpus versus London General Omnibus Co. In this, the employer is held liable for driver's negligence. So obviously here employer is vicariously held liable to compensate for the negligence shown by the driver. So this is all about the vicarious liability. About the strict liability. The concept of strict liability states that it imposes liability without proof of negligence. So here this principle of strict liability was laid down in Rayland versus Fletcher case. So according to this case, the strict liability was laid down. The principle of strict liability or the rule of strict liability was laid down in this Rayland versus Fletcher case. So the essentials under strict liability are the non-natural use of land. The person should have non-natural use of land and escape of dangerous thing and the foreseeable damage. So if the person brings and keeps any hazardous substances in his place or area, and if that hazardous substance escape from that area and causes damage at large, then the person would obviously be held strictly liable to compensate for the damages that he has caused by bringing that hazardous substances into his premises. The concept of absolute liability. This concept of absolute liability has evolved in India in the case known as MC Mehta versus Union of India, which is famously known as Oleum gas leak case. And now let's discuss about the absolute liability. The name itself states that there is an absolute liability and the defendant cannot escape or avoid compensation that he needs to pay or that he is entitled to pay to the plaintiff or public at large for the injuries that he has caused. So here there is no defense available to defendant. So here it is stricter than strict liability. It states that there is no exceptions allowed, which means no defense is available to the defendant for the injuries that he has caused to the public at large. So here the defendant will not be entitled to prove that he is innocent. The essentials under absolute liability is the organization or the body or the establishment should involve in hazardous activity, and due to this hazardous activity harm should be caused and they will be held liable regardless of negligence or forcibility. So the object of this absolute liability is to protect public from industrial and environmental hazards. And the cases, famous cases that are involved or the case that is involved under absolute liability is MC Mehta versus Union of India. About the concept of negligence. So negligence is failure to exercise reasonable care resulting in harm to others. So మనం ఒక పని చేసేటప్పుడు we should take all the reasonable care that should be taken to avoid the harm to others. So we should take all the necessary steps to avoid the harm or the legal injury to others. So whenever we fail to take that reasonable care to avoid the harm, that will obviously lead to the causation of legal injury to others. So this is known as negligence. So the elements under negligence is duty of care, breach of duty, and causation and damages. So these are the types of negligence. First one is professional negligence, medical negligence, and contributory negligence. So this is all about the negligence. About the concept of nuisance. So nuisance is interference with someone's use or enjoyment of their property. So if a person who doesn't have any legal right to enter or enjoy some property, even though he don't have that legal right, still he enters and enjoys that property. So this is known as nuisance. The types of nuisance are private and public nuisance. So the remedies that are available to the aggrieved party or the injured party is injunctions and damages. So here damages is nothing but the compensation. So here the aggrieved party or the suffered party or the injured party who has suffered from nuisance or who is suffering from nuisance can go and file a suit in the court seeking compensation from the other party who has created nuisance. So this is all about the nuisance, and discuss about the concept of trespass. So trespass means unlawful entry onto the someone's property without their permission. So here if a person who is not entitled or who doesn't have the right to enter into some other's property, still he enters without having any legal right, then it is known as unlawful entry, and that comes under trespass. So there is types of trespasses. Those are trespass to land, trespass to goods, trespass to person. So the remedies that an aggrieved person can get is damages, that is compensation, and injunctions. So this may be temporary or permanent. So temporary injunctions are given to stop an unlawful act or an act temporarily for certain period of time, and these permanent injunctions are provided to the aggrieved party to stop or prevent an act permanently. So here the aggrieved party can get compensation also if he suffers from trespass. So this is all about the concept of trespass. So now let's discuss about the intentional torts. So the acts which are committed with the intent to cause harm. So there is always an intention to cause harm to others. So this is known as intentional harm. So examples are assault, battery, false imprisonment, and defamation. So the remedies available to the injured party are damages and injunctions. So obviously the damages means compensation. Don't get confused with the damages. This is the damage. It is compensation under law of torts. So this is all about the intentional torts. Various concepts that are involved in law of torts. Mainly, law of torts provides compensation for civil wrongs and serves as a deterrent, and concepts like general defenses, vicarious liability, and the strict liability, these are evolved to ensure justice and fairness to the public at large. So this is all about the law of torts.